Financial. The purpose of this meeting this morning is to provide information or disseminate it to the community regarding the building proposals that have been approved by the school board. And with that, I will turn this over to the architects.
The board at the last board meeting officially approved the concepts for the referendum and the concept alternative if the referendum happens to fail. Now, keep in mind throughout this presentation, these are conceptual images and drawings as they are currently. Whichever option ends up going through, we'll be forming a community steering committee made up of people yet to be determined. I'm sure board members will be on it, teachers will be on it, which will ultimately define the final solution. So, with that, we'll start with the first concept, which is what happens if the referendum fails. The school board has tasked us to come up with a solution based on anticipated funding of about $4.1 million. Now, with that, the state of Illinois still would have to approve that amount based on criteria for if we eliminate the existing elementary school building. So that number and is not etched in stone. The concept is technically not etched in stone, but this is the task that we have to present to you so far, and what we can do with the 4.1 million roughly. So what we've done is we've got some photos kind of of the existing building as you see it, and our addition. If you can go to the next slide, Tom. What was being proposed is off of the east side of the building here, which was the largest area of land, which wouldn't impact athletic fields, parking, and areas like that. Now the floor plan, what we're proposing is adding on, you can see in the red, that would be new construction, approximately 9 classrooms, which is a little bit over 12,000 square feet. In addition to that, the areas in the light blue, which you see would be areas that we've kind of earmarked for modification. So we have a classroom on the south end of the building, which needs to get a floor level up consistent, taking out a little bathroom in there to make it more of a classroom space. There's an area in this school called the pit. It's an open area, which could be earmarked for potentially an art room, maybe even another library on that side of the school. Some bathroom increases, and then up in the cafeteria over here is some additional egress components just to help with traffic flow. Also in that big blue area by the pit, the art room, whatever it might be, there'd be another egress component again to assist with the population increase in this school and how would we safely get kids out. One caveat of the addition, based on current state code, that portion of the building would have to be sprinklered, and there'd have to be a firewall constructed between the two sections of the building because the rest of the school would not have to be sprinklered. Sprinkling on this portion of the building has to be done based on a storage tank and a fire pump. If there's not enough pressure from the water system that we currently have here in town in order to put in a standard fire sprinkler system. Can we go to the next view? This is just some imagery of the concept on how it might work with the existing architecture of the building. Go to the next slide. And Tom, actually, if you go back to the plan, I want to point out a couple of things. And again, keep in mind this is a concept. So if this ends up being a 12,000 square foot addition, or it ends up being a 10,000 square foot addition, and we put more renovation dollars in to supplement existing areas that are being underutilized, that certainly can take place. But right now, what we kind of concentrated on in this was creating enough classroom space to handle the occupant load of the school. Now, it may look fine on paper, but there's certainly some deficiencies in here and some compromises that would have to take place. Compromises such as we currently have an undersized kitchen and cafeteria as the population stands now. By doubling the population, it obviously is going to have more of an impact. In light of what's happened recently in the district and moving more kids in here, there's going to be, a kind of a trial run, per se, as how the kitchen could potentially operate with the additional occupation of the facility. There are some other spaces, as I mentioned, the additional space in the big blue section there. We feel that an additional library potentially on that side of the school would benefit the younger children rather than running all the way from the one end of the school all the way up to where the current library is. Just is not very feasible. There's other spaces which in here which were lacking. Computer labs. We would like to see a couple computer labs in there. We'd like to see more special ed classrooms, more occupational and physical therapy rooms. And then the current teacher staff lounge would certainly be undersized. We have one Title I room currently specified in here. We would like to see more. And the district offices would need to find a home, and unfortunately, that maybe that's out at the high school, and I think we probably need 3 Title I rooms. So those are some things that we can't fit into the budget within the space now. Part of the caveat is that budget could potentially go up because right now it's based on the health, life, safety survey and the dollars allocated to that right now, which was at $4.1 million. If more money is found within the elementary school health, life, safety funds, then those dollars could go up and potentially be allocated to this solution. But again, I stress that the state of Illinois has to approve that option. We'll offer questions on this potential solution now if you have any. And we're certainly going to entertain a lot of questions at the end. Yes?
You want me up there or here?
Depends how loud you talk.
Okay, fine. I just want to be clear, I'm not sure I understood this. You took the 4.1 and you gave all of it to the classroom space. Obviously, that's the priority, providing classroom space. However, if there are other enhancements that folks want within the existing building, it could be done, but at the expense of taking away from what we see on this drawing. Kind of a rob Peter to pay Paul scenario?
Potentially, or typically renovation costs are less than new construction costs. So I mentioned before that. So right now we have earmarked 9 classrooms. I think in a special ed classroom, some toilet rooms in this potential addition. If it got reduced, as I mentioned, the 12,000 square feet, if it was reduced to 10 or 8, and there's some spaces in here that have been brought up in some of the board meetings, which maybe some of you folks have attended. There's a garage area right over here that could potentially be retrofitted for classrooms. There's the old health rooms that are over on that side of the building. Although it's not handicap accessible, might possibly be allowed to be renovated for more classrooms. Not ideal because traffic flow getting in and out of these spaces, you have to go through a gymnasium and things like that. So we kind of try to use our experience and common sense as to what made the most bang for the buck, I guess, with respect to getting the kids into the flow. One thing I'll mention about the classroom space is 6th, 7th, and 8th kind of intermingle in the school. And the way we set up classrooms is there's 2 pre-K spaces, 3 kindergarten spaces that are dedicated, and then grades 1 through 5 have 2 classrooms each. But then we have 4 flexible classrooms as the population changes in grades, which it does. Sometimes you only need 2 sections, sometimes you need 3 sections. So again, classroom space, we're somewhat comfortable. The ancillary spaces, not so much. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
On that very same subject, you talked about the different classroom sizes and various notice on the addition, there's not really listing right about the elementary school and Midland, as far as the actual number in the classroom. Can you give me an idea of how many classroom size?
Well, I think ideally they want to keep the classroom size to around 20, from a teaching perspective. Can you get more kids in some of these classrooms? Yes. It's all going to depend on how the district wants to allocate the kids and how many kids you want to populate the classrooms with.
Okay, with the current plan, though, how many would actually be in those classrooms as far as the largest ones are going? This one here references, I believe, plus or minus 20. There's nothing on this that would have class.
Same numbers. We're looking to try to get the same numbers. We don't want to change the population of the school and the way the school teaches currently. Yes, sir.
What the cost of this addition in connection to what the value of this school is right now, wouldn't this potentially make you have to bring the rest of the school up to code, especially when it comes to sprinkling the rest of the school?
You'd have to get over 50% typically. So.
And what's the value of this school as it stands?
It's over the numbers where we have. I talked to the state about that as far as sprinkling the balance of the school, and they said at this point, with what we're planning on doing, you would not have to do it. If these dollars
It can be on board though, what?
Yeah, we
as
would.
far as, having the fire marshal's approval to, we're going to go ahead and let this stay grandfathered or do this. It potentially could come in to bring everything else up in the code with all the other problems.
There is
potential.
a place where that crosses, and I can find that out from the state and I can post it on the website. But there would be a potential if it got to that point. It would be significant more dollars though to get to that point.
Let's break when the rest of this place considerably.
Here's where the scenario that you're talking about may take place. It's just that we don't know yet. There's no way to know until it goes to the state. As we mentioned, the dollar amount of $4.1 million is based on the current health, life, safety assessment work at the existing elementary school. It's kind of complicated, but that's how the state will allocate this $4.1 million based on that. But it's also, in order for this scenario to be approved by the state, they have to determine that it's equitable, that it meets the existing space and size of space standards from the existing elementary school to this building. And so that's part of the review. They may come back and say, you know what, even if you can make your kitchen work, we don't believe it really does in terms of the numbers. You don't have enough space for your admin areas. You don't have enough other types of spaces, whether it's special ed spaces or some of the other spaces, computer rooms that Chuck mentioned. They may come back and say, look, without those spaces, we're not going to approve the $4.1 million being used here. Just a minute. And if that's the case, then the district would have to find some additional dollars. Now, with some new information that we found out at the elementary school, we may be able to raise those dollars up to be able for the state to approve that in order for us to put those spaces in here. If that's the case, then certainly the dollars go up and the tax impact goes up too. I mean, there's just a correlation. Yes.
So basically then what we're saying is this 4.1 million could potentially even reach up to the 9.4 million or potentially just get shot down by the state completely. So if we don't vote for a new school, we potentially could have nothing.
Well, nothing, I suppose, what you would have are different options. You would have options to be able to find additional dollars. You could go to another referendum. I mean, there's more options.
Right.
Yes.
My question is exactly which school planning would be reviewed by the state to get approval?
It would have to happen after the referendum. Yes.
The point you made a minute ago that if the addition is significantly different from what it offers to now, to
as we mentioned, the classrooms we feel are pretty comparable. We think we can find the number of classrooms. And they don't necessarily look at square footage as much as they look at spaces, being able to deliver spaces. So the classrooms, we think we can get there. Where it's a problem is all the other spaces, the kitchen, computer rooms, special ed support rooms. There just simply isn't space for those right now in this plan. Yes.
That's also parallel to like factor which is you have 10% of the global population, that can actually be burned down by the go back to 4.1 correct?
I mean, there's all sorts of scenarios that could play out. The point is, this may be accepted. I don't want to say that it won't be. We just don't know and won't know until it depends on how the referendum is. Then we're able to take it to the state with a real scenario that says, look, here's what we think we can do. Then they'll take a look at it and tell us yes or no, and then we go from there. Yes.
But you said there's not space for these auxiliary rooms? What is the solution then?
You'd have to build new square footage, more new square footage.
Where does the money come from for that?
That's what we're talking about. You would have to go back to the existing elementary school, redo the health life safety assessment, see if you can find some additional dollars that could be added to that 4.1 million.
And if you can't find that additional money?
Then you'd probably have to go to referendum.
Thank you.
So really, in your eyes, the optimal thing to do is build a new school.
Yeah, amen. Yes.
I'll let you make that determination.
I mean, you're a professional, though. I mean, in your eyes, would you build a new school? What, 42,000 square feet against 12,000 square feet and potential problems? 42,000 square feet, everything's up to code, you're ready to roll.
The other option is too, is of course, is to take the 4.1 million from the health life safety and allocate those dollars to the current elementary school. So that's what the state would tell us too. You can put those dollars into that school.
No way.
Yes. Yeah, code would dictate exactly how many restrooms that we would need to add. And so we have to add the number to meet the code requirements. Yes.
Tom, would Tom do us all a favor, and when they ask a question, because nobody...
Repeat the question?
Please repeat the question.
She asked how many bathrooms are we going to put in? Yes.
If this would become an option, and you started remodeling the buildings, how would you know that the electrical would be adequate, and the water and sewer would be adequate? Is that when you start doing it? Is that when that kind of stuff is?
So the question is, when and if this becomes the solution and we start remodeling, how do we know that the existing services serving this building are adequate enough to handle the new addition and remodeling? We've actually had an engineer look at this building specifically for some of those things, and we feel like, at least with what we're showing here, we would be adequate to be able to tap into the existing HVAC system. Obviously, as Chuck mentioned, there's not enough water pressure to handle the fire protection for this new building, so that's something that we have to take into account in the 4.1 million. But the rest of the services right now we feel like are probably there, maybe close. If the issue is much larger, then we might have to take a look at that again. So, yes.
Is that considered having water pressure to build a code on the new part of the building? What about the new part?
That's actually, I want to restate, he asks, is the water pressure not available for the new part? It's actually for fire protection only. The water pressure to serve the buildings, there's a the toilets and the sinks is accurate. Oh,
Are we gonna be fire protecting the old part of the building? Yeah, the new building, the new part will be fire protected. What about the old?
the old building is still grandfathered in, and you don't have to add the fire protection. No fire protection. No, well, sprinkler systems. Not in this building. No, sprinkler systems. Yes,
So either way, this section does not require.
that's correct. Yes. So the question is, when we do the new addition, are we going to take care of the sewer problems that exist in the existing building already? That's that question. Both. The answer would be, of course, we'd have to do that. Yes. Yes.
Are there any additional tornado shelters
Yeah, the question is, are there any additional tornado shelters with the new addition? Essentially, what we would have to do is look at the student population in the building to see what the state would require for that. Right now, no, probably not, but they may. But that would be a state requirement, so. Yes?
I have a question, since we're adding on to an already existing old building, in this old building, how much of it has lead pipes for plumbing?
How much of this existing building has lead pipes for plumbing? We don't want to come in here, I think. Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they walk through the middle school and test that already, or am I wrong?
They may have tested for lead, for the lead abatement problem, but I'm talking the actual pipes that come through this, that's all that old plumbing. So potentially it's lead piping more than likely.
The answer is I don't know. That's the answer. So,
And we know there's no fire hydrants up here on the top of the hill, the fire department's already told you that.
yes.
So obviously, a lot of things have come up that there's issues with this building. So with the referendum, the $10 million referendum, how much of that money is going to be spent on bringing this building up to where it should be, whether we make a new school or not?
None of those dollars right now are allocated anywhere else except for the new elementary school.
Where does that money come if we have no fire protection in the room we're in right now? Where is that money going to come from, or do we not care about those kids?
You have to talk to the board about that. Yes.
Now you're talking about the new addition, and have a hole in there, water can bring these up.
Yes.
They don't have enough water here, still structure to bring water up here, to bring water to it, they still have to clear the lake, and get the water to bring over.
That's possible. Anything else? We can get our, oh, well,
The tank would be sized enough for what the code dictates for the sprinkler system for that addition. So there's a certain amount of time frame that you have to sprinkle the building for.
see, he's asking about the sprinkler system and the amount of water in the holding tank, whether there would be enough water to be able to handle the new addition. The answer is yes. There would be. New addition only. New addition only.
What do we get for the new addition if it starts on fire?
Take them outside. Let's not leave them
So, how are we doing with our computer? We need more questions, Sharon. Either that or start tapping. Yes.
Have we not learned how to build pretty much fireproof schools? When was the last time the child actually died in a school fire?
Wouldn't have the slightest idea. The new building.
1958.
The new addition
1958.
would meet all of those codes.
Right, 1958 was the last.
Any other questions? Is it with the computer or is it with the flash drive? Well, tell you what, Chuck, why don't you go get
the stand with the drawings on it, and everybody's got a copy of the other drawings, so we can follow along. Oh. Why don't you, we'll get started, and you can bring it up, that's fine. Thank you. No, the other one, actually. So now you're all going to want to pick up your sheet with the new building. We're just going to review the new building here for a minute. Okay. So the new building, the referendum amount is $10.8 million. $9.8 million, excuse me, I want to do that. $9.8 million. It's a new pre-K, grade 3 school with 3 sections, K through 3. And at least right now, this may change with some board action that was taken at the last board meeting, but when this was designed, it was anticipated that the existing building would be in place while the new building would be constructed. And which means it would be a 2-story solution, but even if the new building is gone, probably would still be a 2-story solution. You just really don't have enough room for that single-story footprint. There would be separate bus and parent drop-offs, and we'll look at that in a minute. And as mentioned earlier, the typical classroom population we would look at to be about 20 for each grade level, with a total school population of about 280 to 320. And again, you'll need to refer to your drawing here, if you would please. But you can see the yellow block represents the new building. You can see the dotted red line. That represents the existing building. Again, anticipated to stay in place during design and construction of this. May be gone. And then you can see in the gray areas noted as parking, on-site parking and on-site bus drop-off, which are separated. And that's a key thing for safety, to have that separated traffic between bus drop-off traffic, parent drop-off traffic, and staff parking and public parking. And then the rest of the area would be playground, noted as playground over here. And I think the existing park will still be played for part of that too. And the floor plan, we can look at the floor plan as an organization of spaces right now. It's basically an idea to account for the number of spaces for this building, outlining the different classroom areas. There would be a new cafeteria area, a new kitchen area, a new gym area with a stage, kindergarten classrooms down here, thinking about preschool classrooms here so they can exit directly out the back of the school to a protected playground. Of course, the necessary bathrooms and library and new administrative area to control security and have a controlled secure entrance. And then you go up the stairs. There's two sets of stairs here. Go up to the second floor, and you've got a large classroom, a music area, first, second, and third grade classrooms up here, and some support spaces. Again, some Title I spaces, some special ed spaces. But most of those actually are on the first floor. So what we've done is we were given a $9.8 million budget and a program request to fit a pre-K through grade 3 school into this with 3 sections. And so that's what we've done, and try to account for all of those spaces. Now, as Chuck mentioned before, that once we get into the design process, if the referendum is successful, if this is the direction that we go, we'll create a design committee with representatives from the board, staff, community, to be able to talk about, what
what spaces really should be in here. We've made our assumptions based on designing many of these, but every school is different. Every school will have their own particular ideas about what spaces they need, how big they should be, but within the context of that $9.8 million, we can move some of these spaces around, we can make it bigger, we can make it smaller, and then we have to talk about things like how you will teach. You know, teaching is going to a much more collaborative teaching method now. It's not desks in rows with the teacher in front, but the type of furniture is changing dramatically that teachers use. Technology will have a tremendous impact on education. It's already having a tremendous impact, and it'll be even more so as we move into the future. And so, whether it's this building or even the existing building here, one of the things that we want to focus on when we get into the design is how technology and changing teaching methods will impact how we design this building. And so those will be detailed conversations that we'll have, regardless of the solution that happens, to make sure that within the context of the dollars that are available, and then if it does go in here, the context of the situations that we have to work around, we can give you the best possible tool for your teachers to use to make your students as successful as possible, which is really the goal of everyone. So, let's go to the next slide. And these are just some images which represent an idea about what it possibly could be, but more importantly, it's talking about the type of materials, a brick and block building, aluminum windows. That would be the single point of controlled entry. There's a little bit of an overall, again, probably one that's looking a little bit different than that, but gives us an idea about what it could be. And why don't you just go through these quickly. So that's that would be the new building and possibilities that exist there. So, anybody have any questions about that? Yes. So the question is, we show separate bus and parent drop-off areas and drives at the new school. What about this building? What we've done is allocated, there's some site money. I can't remember exactly how much it is, do you recall? About $300,000 maybe for this building here. Yeah, and so what the question is, whatever that amount of money will allow us to do. That's really the question. Can we do that? We'll certainly look at it, and if we can make it work, we certainly will.
Wait, can you
Yes.
clarify that? I just asked that very question. Was what % of that money in the referendum was projected to be in this school? And you told me no.
But what you misunderstood what I said too. Zero of the $9.8 million is allocated to be here. But if the referendum doesn't pass, within that $4.1 million, there's, I think, $200,000 or $300,000 for site work within that budget. Does that make sense?
All right, but so then go back to my original question. If the referendum passes, how much of that money is projected to be?
None. I hope I'm being clear with that.
So how would we fix the driveway here?
You have to talk to the board about that. That's not within the scope of this project. If the referendum passes and the new building is built, there has not been money allocated for this building. It would have to come out of your general fund, the existing general fund, or whatever pool of dollars the board uses for those kinds of repairs and maintenance dollars. I don't know, Chuck.
Yes, there is health life safety money that is
for this building, but it's not relating to the drive situations. It's more of, you know, the maintenance items that needs to be taking place, and the board has given us the authority to start to pursue what the cost and timing of getting that done. So not only here, but also at the high school. Yes.
One other question I may have, you said something about stairs, two, one up and one down. 88, is there going to be an elevator?
Yes. Yes, there has to be. There will be an elevator.
The question is, was there going to be an elevator in the new building? The answer is yes.
Yes. The new building would be fully accessible.
The 4.1 that we get to remodel here, you can't apply for that to be used for the building, the new building,
No.
plus the referendum plus that?
No.
Why is that?
It would have to, for it to be a new building, it has to be then it has to be really like a one-to-one comparison. So we would need to get health, life, safety funds up in the amount of $8 million because the state does is they determine the value of the current building, and that's based on a cost guide, in a book, the means cost guide. If anybody's in construction, they may be familiar with that. So there's dollars that they would say, okay, you got roughly 49,000 square feet at the elementary school. We say it's worth X number of millions of dollars. So the replacement cost to do that, then to be earmarked would be, you have to get the building to be up to that amount of dollars for equal replacement value.
You have to find that amount of money in the existing building, and the state would say, yes, there is $8 million worth of repairs that's needed. Now we'll give you the $8 million.
The other thing though is, from the state dollars with that and what actual construction costs are and other soft costs and other things, you still would need to find more money, we think, to get apples to apples comparison.
We don't believe you're there yet with the 4.1 million. So we got to do some more investigation. Yes?
Did I understand you to say that you were given a $9.8 million budget, and then you designed a school to spend $9.8 million?
That's correct.
You weren't given what we need, design the school, and then find out what it would cost.
That's correct. The question was,
You went with the budget first and not the needs.
budget first, then the design followed into the budget. That's correct.
So this may be more school than we actually need.
The 9.8.
Yeah, the 9.8.
The question is, the 9.8 need more school than you need? No, I really don't think so, not in my professional opinion. It's pushing, everything should be a little bit larger than the building.
But I mean, you were given the money first and then design something.
That's correct.
Instead of giving the needs, design it, figure out what it's going to cost.
Correct.
So based on the needs, what do you think, your professional opinion, what do you think the dollar amount for a new school would be?
Well, I think we looked at that at the referendum before. I think we were up around 12 million, I think. But included, that was purchasing land too. So, you need another $1 million maybe to get everything to where you really say, every space is exactly like you really want.
But in your professional opinion?
That's what I said, yes. Yes. You'd probably be in, we'll probably be in $7 million range, probably.
Repeat the question.
The question was, how much do we believe you would need to do everything that you really need to do here? So instead of the 4.1, what would be the additional dollars to do that? I'd say we talked about this price 6.5, maybe 7 something, probably.
Because last year, when the board looked at the referendum, they said the add-on here would be 11.1 million.
And there's a lot of stuff in that too, but if you want to look at the minimum to an apples-to-apples comparison. But if you really want to do both of them, the numbers that we had at the referendum before would be the numbers that I would say are appropriate. Yes?
So looking at the addition to the school, you mentioned that right now the
So the question is, she said, we mentioned that we could take money out of the new addition and repurpose it or reallocate it to the new building if we felt that was the way to go. And then would we lose classrooms? Not necessarily. I mean, you would just be, but you would be moving that classroom space and remodeling it somewhere inside here. So the space may stay the same, but it would, instead of being in the new construction, it would be over here. And eventually, you still have to build about the same 12,000 square feet. You just don't have enough room.
Well, no, don't look at it that way, because you might be on the committee that helps us design that school, design the addition of the school. So when I was talking about reallocating the funds, for example, let's say the 2 music rooms that you currently have there, maybe that makes more sense for classrooms, and maybe we would redesign some area in there for music or something like that. So that way, in the addition, you could essentially maybe lose maybe a couple thousand square feet and take the new dollar construction cost down and your remodeling construction cost up. So we wouldn't want to sacrifice classrooms, but once the design got underway, the steering committee that's going to help us design whichever solution will make that decision. And then the board approves that decision. And the state approves it, absolutely. So, yes. Yes, go ahead.
Does the $9.8 million for the new school include all the furnishing, the playground?
The question is, does the 9.8 include all the furniture and the playgrounds? What we've done, and this goes back to this goes back to the fundamental question that this gentleman asked back there. And so we've got this school that we sort of fit into a budget. So what we've done is taken that budget and broken it down into some big categories, including a category for fixtures, furniture, equipment, FF&E. And we've got a dollar amount allocated there right now. Let's say we can get all new classroom furniture that we want, but maybe within that dollar amount we can only get half of the playground equipment that we want. I'm just making this up. So then as the design committee, you have to go, okay, is that going to be okay? Can we fundraise in the community for the other half? Do we want to take something over here? It's the robbing the Peter that paid Paul thing that somebody said. Do we have to take something over here to buy the additional new outside playground equipment? That's the way it works. We've got a dollar amount that's set in there. How we allocate those dollars in the final design is going to be real critical. That's why we're going to need really good input and a good committee structure to help us make those decisions. Does that answer the question? Yes?
I have 2 questions. The first question is the $9.8 million, does that include the demolition of the old building? And if not, where does that money come from? The second question is, have you even considered adding to the high school and moving the junior high out to the high school?
So the first question was, does the 9.8 include the demolition of the existing building? And if not, where does that money come from? The 9.8 does not include the demolition of the existing building. What the board voted on the last time they got together was for us to go out and put together a bid package for that existing building to determine those exact costs. We have given the board some broad costs for that. We're going to get very accurate costs for that. But that money will come out of from some separate funding source. And then, I'm sorry, I lost in my answer. What was your second question?
Have you considered adding on to the high school and moving the junior high kids out there?
Yeah.
The question was, have we considered adding on to the high school and moving junior high out to the high school? Yes, we've been through many scenarios. That has been one of the scenarios. But part of the funding process about putting money into this school is moving the kids into a like environment. So moving junior high out to the high school is not moving the grades that we're replacing at the elementary school. So that would need to happen here, not at the high school. That, yeah, the question was, that's dictated by the state, that is correct, that is dictated by the state.
We can't use the $4.1 million to move kids from this building to the high school. Yes.
So to re-clarify, the demolition cost from the school, this one is either here or over there also. Say it's a huge building. It's got-
There's no dollars in either budget allocated to demolish the building.
Also, the board is already voted that grade school will be demolished. And the option of going to the high school, the voting panel, is two options. The rest is going to be demolished. No more options.
I'll let the board clarify what the purpose of it is. Yes. So her question was, if we would move the kids from here and put them in the high school, we would be still opening up a like environment to put the kids, to bring the elementary schools here. But what you're missing is, and I hope we'll try to be clear about this, the state will not allow us to use any funds to move these kids over to the high school.